Hello and welcome to It's a Code You, mental health support for those working in healthcare. This is a podcast created for healthcare employees to explore not only issues relating to mental and emotional health, but also unique challenges that those working in healthcare are faced with. Your hosts are Adina Tucker, a licensed clinical social worker with Dartmouth Health, and Jennifer Hinsey, an MSW also with Dartmouth Health. Welcome to It's a Code You. We are recording this episode in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month in May. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about Therapy 101. So for anyone who has never been to therapy and isn't sure what it would be like or what to expect, or maybe you've heard some rumors about what therapy is like and you're just wondering if it's for you. So that's what we're going to get into in this episode. And first, we're going to talk about the realities of mental health and therapy. Mental health is an essential part of our overall well being, and just like physical health, it's something we all navigate at different points in our lives. It shapes how we think, feel, and act, and it plays a key role in how we relate to others, how we make choices, and how we navigate our daily lives. So, when our mental health is struggling, it can also affect our physical health, contributing to increased risks for conditions like heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. And whether it's managing stress, coping with grief, addressing trauma, or simply working towards personal growth, mental health support can make a meaningful difference. So, just some facts about mental health as we get started. Around 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experience a mental health condition each year, and mental health challenges are common and they affect people from all walks of life. Mental health isn't just something that adults deal with, and in fact, half of all mental health conditions begin before the age of 14, and about 3/4 begin before age 24. Early support can be incredibly helpful. People experiencing mental health conditions are far more likely to be the victims of violence than the cause of it. So, compassion and understanding instead of fear should guide how we talk about mental health. Mental health conditions arise from a complex mix of factors, including genetics, biology, life experiences, and your environment. They have nothing to do with personal strengths or the character of a person. And in fact, reaching out for help takes tremendous courage and strength. Therapy is a helpful and proactive tool, not just for people in crisis. People seek therapy for a wide range of reasons, including anxiety, depression, grief, self-esteem, identity exploration, or life transitions like becoming a parent, changing careers, or coping with loss. And there are many paths to healing. Some people benefit most from talk therapy, others from medication, and many from a combination. And a skilled therapist can help you figure out what feels right for you based on your needs and values.
Now, if you've never been to therapy before, it's totally normal to feel a bit unsure or even nervous about what to expect. Starting something new, especially something as personal as therapy, can bring up a lot of feelings. The good news is, therapy is designed to be a supportive space, and your therapist is there to walk with you, not judge you. So let's break it down so it feels a little less mysterious. Here's a look at what you might expect. Starting with the intake process. So, most therapy practices begin with some simple paperwork that could be either online or in person. And this might include a few forms about your background, your general health, and what's been on your mind lately. Some places will ask you to fill out an intake questionnaire to get a sense of how you've been feeling and what kinds of support you're actually looking for. You don't need to know exactly how to explain everything, just be as honest and open as you can. The goal is simply to help your therapist understand where you're starting from. Now let's talk about the very first session. Your first session, it's a conversation. It's not a test, and it's all about building connection, establishing a rapport, and building what's called the therapeutic relationship between you and your therapy provider. This first session is a chance for your therapist to get to know you and for you to get to know them. They'll typically start by explaining how therapy works, what your rights are as a client, and what's confidential. And your therapist will likely want to know what brings you to therapy, how you've been feeling, how long things have been going on, and whether you've had any kind of support before. Your therapist likely wants to know about your mental health history. They may ask about your general support system. What's your family system look like? Well, do you get any support outside of your family, from friends or coworkers? Major life events, or even what your day to day routine looks like. Do you already have some goals in mind, like reducing anxiety or feeling better about yourself? Or do you just feel overwhelmed in general and not know where to start? Your therapist will want to discuss this with you and get you an initial plan in place that's based on your individual needs, goals, and values. Your therapist will likely talk to you about the frequency of treatment as well. Maybe they'll recommend you attend weekly or monthly. They might also suggest some additional therapeutic supports in between sessions, things like a group setting where you can learn different skills and reinforce your therapeutic goals. This is also something you can discuss if you have any questions or concerns about that. And this is also a time for you to get to know the therapist and an opportunity for you to ask some questions. You can ask about their approach to therapy, their experience, their education and training, or anything else that might help you feel more comfortable. It's okay to be curious and it's okay to be cautious. You're allowed to take your time.
Therapy can happen in two main ways: in person or via telehealth, either by video or phone, but videos usually more common. Both options can be incredibly effective, and each comes with its own vibe and benefits. In person therapy offers a dedicated space where you physically leave your usual environment and enter a calming private setting. For some people, being face to face with their therapist helps create a stronger sense of connection and focus. Telehealth therapy brings therapy to you wherever you are. You can meet with your therapist from your home, a parked car, or even during a lunch break at work. It's flexible, convenient, and accessible. For some, it feels more comfortable opening up from a familiar space, but for others, it could feel more casual or less structured, which could be a plus or a challenge depending on your personal needs and preferences. Some people start with one format and then later switch to the other. And what matters most is what helps you feel safe, seen, and supported. And as Jennifer stated earlier, therapy is a relationship. So we really want to emphasize that a therapeutic relationship is a relationship. And like any relationship, it takes time to build trust, connection, and rapport. And sometimes you'll feel a strong connection right away. Other times it may take a few sessions. And sometimes, even with a great therapist, it just might not be the right fit. And that's okay. Therapists understand this and are often happy to help you find someone else who might be a better match. It's encouraged and helpful for your therapist to know if you're not feeling it's a good fit. And it can be a wonderful learning opportunity for everyone to talk about why you feel this way. Most therapists are comfortable having this conversation with you. Between your therapy sessions, therapists will likely ask you or suggest certain interventions for you to do. You may hear it referred to as homework, and homework can help reinforce what you and your therapist cover in session. Just remember that therapy is collaborative and you and your therapist are a team. So if something doesn't feel helpful, you can say so. If you're given homework like journaling or listening to a podcast, but it doesn't work for you, let your therapist know. There's usually another way. And working together with your therapist to come up with interventions and support that fits your specific needs, your lifestyle, and your goals is really going to be the most supportive in you feeling better and making progress towards your goals.
That's a great point, Adina. I don't know, do you have some favorite types of homework you like to give out?
Do, in fact, I don't know if it's just the season of things, but I'm starting to notice that a lot of by our, I mean the collective we as the world, including myself and that, a lot of our anxiety and other things can come from negative beliefs that we have about ourselves because we're not always nice to ourselves. So I like to do or ask people to do self compassion work. And I usually ask them to start with writing a letter to themselves, or even if they already journal, doing a journal entry, maybe after something that, like, maybe they said something and they're like ruminating, "Oh, why did I say that? That was so stupid." We've all done that. Taking the time and basically writing to themselves what they would say if their friend was coming to them and saying, "Hey, I said this thing and I feel so dumb. I don't know why I said that and this person's probably so upset and I can't stop thinking about it." What would you say to your friend in that instance? And then really think about, well, what is it you're saying to yourself when you do something like anyone else does, which is and the reality is most of the time the person who you said it to didn't have any kind of feelings about it, didn't think about it, but of course it doesn't hit us that way. So I like to do a lot of self-compassion stuff and I like to ask people to start with that, which is harder than it seems because if you really believe some negative things about yourself, it feels super uncomfortable to try to say something nice.
Mhm.
But that's something we can then talk about in session.
Such a good way to get folks in the habit of reflecting compassionately on themselves and what they're struggling with. So that's great. I'm a big fan of the workbooks. I love the structure it can provide and like a nice recap of maybe what we talked about in session and incorporating a little outside activity with it too, like journal prompts or whatever it might be. But all of this to say, just as you mentioned, it's these things are not for everyone. And so you can work with your therapist to figure out what is a good fit when it comes to homework. I really do love the self-compassion approach and the frequency that you're talking about doing that with people. So let's talk about things to keep in mind when you start therapy. Starting therapy can feel daunting and scary, but we want you to remember that you don't need to feel like you have it all figured out as you begin this journey. It's completely okay if you don't have specific goals in mind or even the words to describe what you're feeling when you start therapy. Maybe you just know something feels off. Maybe life feels overwhelming and you really aren't sure where to begin. That is okay. In fact, I don't know about you, Adina, but I feel like the majority of new folks that we see, are somewhere right around that place. A lot of uncertainty. That's okay. Your therapist will help you explore what's going on and work with you to create a plan that reflects what matters to you, what your goals are, your values, your hopes. It's a space where you can slow down, breathe, and start sorting things out one step at a time. Now, there may be occasions when your therapist tells you something you don't want to hear. For example, they might gently point out a pattern or a truth you've been avoiding. This can feel uncomfortable, understandably, and that's okay. Discovering and accepting difficult truths is often an important part of the therapeutic process, and ultimately, a path to healing and growth, something we can all benefit from. Fortunately, therapy isn't just about exploring the hard stuff that may knock us off balance at times. It's also a comforting place to land and find some firmer footing in the aftermath. Now, let's talk about the different types of mental health providers that are out there. There's several different types of professionals, all offering therapy, and depending on the state the provider is practicing in, their title might differ a little bit. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail, but here are some general distinctions to know. First, licensed clinical social workers, LCSWs is their abbreviation, licensed mental health counselors or LMHCs, licensed professional counselors, you'll see LPC after their name, marriage and family therapists or LMFTs, and psychologists, who you'll see with a PhD or a PSYD after their names. They are all trained to provide psychotherapy, and each bring their own backgrounds and focus areas. Psychologists often have a strong foundation in research and psychological testing, while social workers are trained with a holistic lens, considering both mental health and environmental factors like relationships, housing, access to care, and on and on.
Now, psychiatrists, which will have either an MD or a DO behind their names, are medical doctors who primarily focus on medication management. Some are also trained in psychotherapy, but this varies. And you can ask your psychiatrist about the services that they specifically offer. You may have also heard the phrase supportive counseling used in addition to psychotherapy. And while both terms are sometimes used interchangeably in casual conversation, they actually refer to different approaches in mental health care. Supportive counseling is typically shorter duration and can be a powerful entry point into mental health care or a bridge during a difficult season of life. Psychotherapy is helpful for deeper healing, chronic issues, or creating long term change. And many therapists integrate both depending on the individual client's needs, similar to interweaving aspects of a variety of interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and on and on. I was going to say, as we're thinking about someone who is maybe thinking about going to therapy or has their first therapy appointment coming up, like what is something that you would say to someone who is
That's tough.
considering it but is unsure?
You know, I would probably say that just like embarking on any new sort of venture, right? We're going to enter it with a certain amount of vulnerability, right? That can feel scary, that can feel just really off putting. And like maybe we should turn away from it and not engage, not go forward. But it's the vulnerability aspect that really is crucial to deeper understanding of ourselves, our lives, right? How we're interacting with other people. And I often have to remember folks in sessions that oftentimes the right or the healthy decision doesn't always come with all the feelings like it is the right thing, right? And so I think just reminding ourselves that starting something new, even if it can feel bad and scary, it doesn't mean that it's the wrong thing for you. And if you can muster up the courage to go forward and hopefully find a good therapist to walk with you, just remember you're not going to be alone for those feelings. And you don't have to carry them all by yourself.
I think that's really important, especially when I have people grappling with. I'll give an example of one, not sure if I should leave a relationship because I love this person. And there are often decisions that we have in life that we have very mixed feelings about. And just because you feel sad about something or it feels emotional, like you said, it doesn't mean you're making the wrong choice. So I think that is important for people to
Yeah.
remember. I was going to say the thing that I would probably want to tell people is you don't have to be in crisis to start therapy. You could maybe be doing pretty well, but then just be reflecting and thinking, like, I have a pattern of kind of doing this thing or choosing these types of relationships or whatever. And I'm not sure I want to keep doing that. And maybe you're okay at the moment, but maybe you just want to get to know yourself a little bit better or figure out where some of these things come from. And you're not necessarily in like a crisis moment. I think there's lot of good things that
Yeah.
could come out of coming to therapy when you're actually doing okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes folks really just need or desire someone to reflect processing day to day with, right? It doesn't mean that, yeah, like you said, doesn't mean they're in crisis and you don't have to show up in crisis. Sometimes just having an ear and someone to help reflect back can be a great way to help move you through life or through your day, whatever that might be.
I kind of think about it like in terms of a couple who maybe is having difficulty, but they wait until they're at that breaking point. Are we going to break up or not before they go to therapy? And by that point, you've got resentment, you've got patterns that have really been ingrained instead of like in the very beginning when they're like, oh, I'm miscommunicating a lot or we're having a lot of misunderstandings. Maybe we should figure out where that breakdown is happening. It's like things don't have to be at their worst for you to get support. Well, thank you for being here with us today as we've walked through what your first steps into therapy might look like. Please remember that experiencing mental health challenges is a natural part of being human. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you, and it's certainly not a reflection of your character. Each of us learns to cope with stress and emotions in different ways, shaped by our life experiences and the resources we've had access to. That's why it's so important to reduce the stigma around mental health and create space for people to seek support without shame. If you're struggling, you're not alone. Reaching out for help, whether through therapy, counseling, or other mental health resources, is a strong and meaningful step toward caring for yourself. Therapy offers a safe and supportive space to better understand what you're going through, to learn new ways to manage life's challenges, and to feel more connected to yourself and others. Getting support isn't a last resort, it's a healthy, proactive way to prioritize your well being. If you've been thinking of going to therapy, but you are unsure of taking a leap, give it a shot. It might be just the thing you need to start feeling better. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, please reach out to us at dhbhs.media@hitchcock.org. And thank you so much for listening.